welcome. I'm Tammy Russell. I'm so glad that you joined me today to go through Activity 3 for 6th grade. The activities and handouts that you will use in today's lesson can be found under the Student Resources tab on the Knox County Schools website. We love to see what you've done in these lessons, and since we don't get to do that in person right now, we would very much like for you to tweet us at Knox County at KCS Science. If this video is hard to understand, there are several options that you can use to make it better. You may turn on closed captions if those are available. You can adjust the playback speed to slow down the video. Consider watching short clips of the video. Pause it, listen, and watch again. Or ask someone in your home to watch the video with you. Stop frequently and talk to your partner about what you heard and what you understood. So it's summer. I have big plans this weekend. But I want to know, since the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is open now, is the weather going to cooperate for me to go on a hike there and then follow that up with a picnic? I want to go on a pretty day. How can I tell? Our standard asks us to be able to analyze and interpret data from weather conditions, weather maps, satellites, and radar to predict probable local weather patterns and conditions. So we're going to do that today. You're going to know if you're successful when you can look at a weather map like this and use it to predict weather in your area. So I want you to think about something you would like to do, something you've got coming up soon. Your goal at the end of today's lesson is to be able to look at a weather map or a series of weather maps and predict the weather for that activity. We're going to ask ourselves certain questions as we move through lessons. What directions do the fronts move? How fast do they move? Is colder weather coming or is warmer weather coming? Is rain moving my way? After today's lesson, you should be able to answer those questions. So let's think back a little bit to Activity 2. We're going to quickly review cold weather front, warm front, high pressure, and low pressure, and we're going to specifically look at how they appear on a map and how you can use maps like this one to predict the weather that's coming. When we look at a weather map, if we see a cold front, there is a certain symbol that's almost always used. This symbol is our cold front symbol. It has triangles on it that point in the direction the arrow is moving. This cold front symbol is almost always blue. On this map, we have a cold front right here. What do you know about the weather in El Paso, Texas in the coming days? That cold front is headed straight for El Paso, Texas. So we're going to learn specifically what that means for the people who live there. So here's a diagram of a cold front, similar to what you saw in Activity 2. Think about the temperatures and precipitation that might result from the movement of this cold front. Here's our map symbol. So we already know that this front is moving this direction. The warm air that is in front of that cold front is moving up and is likely to gather moisture, create clouds, and precipitation. So here's a weather map that has a big cold front shown on it. What do you notice about conditions in front of and behind this cold front? What about this one? Okay, so if you said the weather behind this cold front, the temperatures are much lower, then you would be correct. Here in this area, we have temperatures in the 70s. Behind that cold front, it drops to the 30s and low 40s. That's a significant difference. On this map, here's your cold front. We know it's moving this direction because that's the direction the arrows are pointing. And look at the difference in the temperatures here. We have the 70s on this side of that cold front, and we have 50s and 60s for the most part behind that cold front. So the map for the warm front is similar, but with significant differences. We have the line the same, but instead of triangles on this, we have half circles. We can think of those half circles as little suns that are bringing warmth to the area. Those little suns are pointing in the direction the warm front is moving. So on our map, this is our warm front. It's moving away from Memphis. So the temperatures in this area are about to become warmer than they have been the last couple days. So here's another diagram of a warm front, similar to what you saw in Activity 2. Think about temperatures and precipitation that might result from this warm front. Here's our map symbol for the warm front. So this tells us that the front is moving in this direction. It is overtaking this cold air. The warm air is coming in behind it. And there is some lift to this warm air as it rolls over the cold front, the cold air. That sometimes causes some light precipitation, but not necessarily really bad weather. So what do you notice in these two maps? Identify which direction these two fronts are moving and what's happening to the temperatures as the fronts move through. This particular warm front is moving this direction. We know that because that's where the little suns are pointing. And again, as in the past, the warm temperatures are here. They are overtaking this cold air. So these warm temperatures are going to be moving into this area. Over here, this warm front is moving this direction. So these warm temperatures are going to be sliding up into this area. So notice the differences between these two maps. This cold front is like a wall of cold air. That usually results in significant, dramatic changes in weather and sometimes brings about storms. This warm front is a more gradual lifting of that warm air, so you sometimes get steady light rain, but usually not very intense weather. So let's think a minute about high pressure areas. High pressure areas usually give us very fair conditions, dry, clear weather patterns. The winds around a high pressure move in a clockwise direction. They move this way. The symbol for a high pressure area on a map is usually this blue H. You can see it here. So looking at this map, what kind of weather is heading this direction? That's the kind of weather that's heading that direction. High pressure areas usually give us bluebird skies with light, wispy clouds. A low pressure area, though, is very different. We typically get cloudy, wet weather. The winds around a low pressure center move counterclockwise. You'll learn in Activity 4 what happens when those winds get very strong. Notice all the cloud cover and the rain and maybe even some storms in the area of this low pressure. Here's what low pressure weather can look like. Heavy clouds, approaching rain, Lots of clouds back in here. That's typical low pressure weather pattern. So let's see if you can look at this map. This map actually comes from your textbook. Classify, I want you to fill in these circles with either an H or an L. Here's one that's done for you. This is a high pressure area. As you think about what goes in this first circle, what information on the map is going to help you decide if that is a low or high pressure area? So work from left to right, and then you can check your answers on the next slide. So we're going to go here, then here, then here, and then to this one. I'll wait for you for a second. Are they high or low pressure areas? You ready? Okay, so how did you do? The first circle is a high pressure. How did you know that? It tells us here that areas of low pressure tend to have clouds and areas of high pressure tend to have clear, dry weather. So there aren't many clouds in this area, so that tells us that's probably a high pressure. Here is the second circle is over a bank of clouds, so that is a low pressure area. Then we have this one that was already done for us. What about this one? Are there many clouds in that area? No, so that's a high pressure. This up here is definitely surrounded by lots of clouds and maybe a storm, and that is a low pressure. So can you predict the weather for your special event yet? We're going to watch a quick video clip of a meteorologist who might help you understand this a little better.
You guys are learning about weather, so we're going to talk a couple of things about weather systems and fronts and kind of how those all come together to make weather, and then we'll talk a little bit about your forecast. So first off, we're going to talk about understanding what goes on in a weather map. So first we've got cold air, and as it pushes further to the south, along the leading edge of where that cold air is advancing is where we would set up a cold front, and that's going to be this blue line here with all these triangles, and they point in the direction the cold front is moving. Now on the other side, we have a warm front. When you have a mass of warm air moving northward, or in any direction, the leading edge of that warm air mass is where we draw this warm front, which is going to be the little red line with the half circles. The best way to remember it is they're like little half suns, so they're always denoting warmer air. You kind of work it out that way, where sun, warmth, warm front, right, like that. So that's how we denote where a warm front lays. Now when we start moving and adding in things like pressure systems, we have a low pressure system right here. And air around a low pressure system moves counterclockwise and inward. So when we start putting those air masses around that area of low pressure, we begin to see just a few things happening here. The warm air surging northward, that's where the warm front is. The cold front surging southward, that's where we line up that cold front. And then when we zoom in closer, where we get all the precipitation, what's going to happen here is you've got this air coming down from the north and this air kind of going towards the north and east. What happens is this piles up as it gets close to this warm air mass and it starts to lift. So where these meet, all that wind meets, we call that convergence, the meeting of air. And when it happens, it starts to go, it has nowhere to go, so it has to go up. And once that starts going up, that's where we start to get clouds and rain. And usually along the cold frontal side of a storm is where we'll see things like thunderstorms. But on the warm frontal side, over to the north, that's where we'll start to see just broad areas of rain and showers and cloudiness. And as that comes through, well, the weather gets a little bit cooler. Now, high pressure, a little bit different. High pressure systems, air goes clockwise and outwards from an area of high pressure. So why don't we ever see any rain or anything near an area of high pressure? Well, when you have all of this air moving outwards, it's actually like if you were going to turn the hose right on the ground. What happens is that water goes down and it spreads out. You don't have any lift, so you don't have anything to create that upflow of moisture to create any precipitation. So usually when we talk about high pressure, we talk about nice.
Okay, so now it's your turn. We have in our packet for this week, if you'll get that out, you'll see the first page is actually going to let you practice with a weather map and answer questions about current conditions. So before you begin, read this little paragraph here and then look carefully at your map. and most importantly at your map key. So this map is going to have cold fronts, warm fronts. It gives you temperatures. It gives you certain cities. It gives you weather conditions that are currently happening in the areas that are located on this map. So you're going to complete these which city questions that go with this particular map. Your choices for your answers can be found in this line. So these are going to be, this is your word bank. These are the cities that you're going to put into these blanks. So for number 1, which city is currently having thunderstorms? So I want to go back first to my map key, and I want to look to see what thunderstorms look like on the map. So if I look over this whole map, I only find really one area that looks like this part of the key, and that's Miami area. So that's what I'm going to type as my answer for question number 1. So that is going to be Miami is having thunderstorms. So you're going to finish that page, and then you're going to move to the second page. This page is where you begin to make predictions. Based on this map, again, you're going to want to read this because it talks about direction of weather and how long the forecasts are good for. But the map key is very similar to the one on the previous page. You're going to look at the map, think about what you know about warm and cold fronts, high and low pressure, and you're going to read the map to figure out which one of the 3 choices is the best answer for this question. So for instance, New York. There are 3 forecast possibilities for New York. I'm going to go find New York on the map. It's here. And I notice just to the left of New York is a warm front coming through. Remember, warm fronts have the little half circles, and it also tells me in the key that that's what the warm front looks like. Now, it's not red on this map, but we still have the key that shows us exactly what that is. So since that is a warm front about to move through, I know that warmer temperatures are headed toward New York. So finish that page. And then after you've done both of those pages, you or your parents can check the key that's provided with the activity packet online. Now, think about that something that you have coming up, whether you want to be sure you've got time to ride your bike on a really pretty day. We're going to think about how you can predict weather patterns in your particular area over the course of a few days so that you can pick the best day to do that activity. A few days of weather maps are going to show you what's coming. Watch the low and high pressure systems and fronts as they move across the United States. Then again, let's revisit our questions. What directions do the fronts move? How fast are they moving? Is colder or warmer weather coming? Or is rain moving your way? Now you are going to be the meteorologist. Your assignment for this section is to watch the weather report on the news for 1 week, every day. You can do it on the news, you can do it in the newspaper, you can even use an online weather site, but you're going to track the maps for a week. On the blank map, like this one, you're going to draw in the fronts and the high and low pressure areas. Then you're going to notice what happens to the weather over a course of those 6 or 7 days that you track it. What trends do you see happening over the week? Then you can figure out what predictions you can make for those days. This is going to be a fun activity. There's several different maps provided for you. You may have to trace or copy a few extras to make do for the whole week. But this is where you're going to learn to predict the weather for our area for the activity that you have planned. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're having a great summer. Be sure you tweet us what you come up with. Let us see the maps that you drew. Maybe you even tweet your activity that you did as a result of planning out and making predictions from your maps. We'd love to see that too.